This podcast contains adult themes and language. The views expressed here are our own opinions and experiences. We are not medical professionals.
In this podcast, we discuss our opinions about mental health, sobriety, addiction, and our pursuit of happiness and peace. This is Sober Mind.
Oh, yeah.
Record.
Yeah. Good morning, Cujo.
Good morning, Odie.
Good morning.
Odie's late. Cujo was first. Man, what is happening?
Dogs and cats sleeping together.
Yeah.
Mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria. Okay.
Are we good?
Yes, we're good. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sober Mind. My name is John.
I'm Judy.
And I am Patrick.
Woohoo.
Today's discussion is all about, have we become our parents? Good morning, Michelle.
Morning.
When I brought this up, but before we get into anything, we're going to do gratitude.
Yeah.
I will go first.
Go for it.
I have gratitude for my health and a warm home. Life is good.
Here, here.
Okay, Judy.
I have. Okay, so this will relate to later on in our topic, but I have gratitude for the universe or God or your higher power, however you want to term it, for me being advanced enough to recognize the little symbols and signs that it sends me to learn and grow as a person.
Oh, I love it.
I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
On today's topic, and for reasons we'll go into, was a lot of feelings to sort through. But I am grateful for my family. I have this image in my head that we're just a bunch of magnets together, just dropped. And some days, we're just doing nothing but repulsing each other apart. Mm-hmm. And some days, like the bonds are very strong, you flip them around. So, my wife has given me a better understanding of, ADHD tendencies and the toolkits to understand and the path and journey along that. Flynn is my little mirror, so he's my little Buddha of so many revelations that, come. And so is my daughter, she helps me see attributes in my wife and then myself, and then they're just wonderful people within themselves. So,
nice.
And to put up with me on a regular basis is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's good.
Yeah. Good. Nice, Patrick. Yeah. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Fem. Okay. Yeah. So when I brought this up yesterday, I saw, last weekend, I felt a very resounding, uncomfortable silence from the two.
When you brought the topic up, it was like creaky, creaky.
Yeah. So very uncomfortable silence from you all. And then I realized that maybe I didn't broach the subject comfortably. So I didn't mean it to be abrasive, the discussion primer. It's because as you all know, I don't have any living parents. So I don't have any repercussions when I speak about them in an
I don't
ill
necessarily think it was abrasive. Shocking is more like
Well, that, and it was a big general topic, and we are very aware that the amount of items that we work through and personal turmoil, or I don't want to say call it turmoil, but like just all the different layers that we comb through a lot on our work. There's imprints of our parents along the way through every layer.
Yeah.
And I want to just honor the fact that when we're getting into this conversation, it's very large and complex, and so that in itself felt daunting when you say, well, let's do it. And I'm like,
yeah, it was like for me, it was like a Pandora's box. It was like, do we really want to open that one up? But since I've been able to think about it and kind of go through it in my head, it was a lot easier to gulp down. Because the first thing, when you said that, the first thing that I thought of was all of the hurt and all of the anger and all the stuff. Not am I turning into my mother or my father. It was all of the stuff that I experienced when I was a kid, which is technically two different things.
Well, kind of. And
I mean, they're attached, but am I turning into my mom, or am I upset or my dad, or am I upset because of all the stuff that I had to suffer when I was a kid?
Right. So that's part of this discussion. Is it's interesting that we take it to that extreme. I think 90% of people that we would say, hey, tell me about your imprint that you got from your parents, and it's an immediate, oh fuck. Like, why? I know a couple people that would immediately flip that and turn that into a positive. But it's interesting that we kind of jump to the other end. But okay, so what I want to talk about is, we're not going to go on mine a little bit deep into some of the abuse that I went through, and then why I had the relationship that I had with my mother and the lack of relationship that I had with my father. But I also want to talk about some of the good traits that I have too. So I welcome you guys to discuss that as well. Okay. So do you want me to start?
You're going.
You're going.
All right.
You have the floor.
And where this started from, this again primer of a conversation, was that I was thinking about this on a run the other day, and that is some of the scenarios and abusive situations that my mother inflicted on me and my siblings and put us through has a really profound imprint still. And I'm 51 years old. And I made a short about it, and I was relaying that, it's still difficult for me to forgive some of the things that she did. And so that's a whole discussion on its own, because I think we open up a can of worms. People are like, well, you have to forgive, you have to forget, and you have to move on, and this is blah blah blah. I don't know. I think that's an easier said than done philosophy, because if it was just that, then I would simply do it instead of having these things still be loud within me and my overall makeup. So some of the things that I inherited from my mother, aside from the addictive personality and all that stuff, that's just a genetic trait. But I'm talking about more of the personal behavioral stuff that were imprinted on me at a very young age. And that is, she taught us how to be deceitful, how to lie and cheat and be hurtful. And I remember sort of gravitating towards being that emotional dysfunction when I was very young, because we watched her do it. So we all understand that when we're that young, that's how you're going to start.
Well, yeah, and those are very I don't want to say primitive. They're very informative, impressionable years of your life. And so when those things are happening in your life, that's your fact.
They set the baseline.
Yeah, right, that's your truth. They're showing you the truth or the supposed truth of how things are supposed to be.
Yeah. Now, that said, I do remember having a different grasp on the reality of how I was supposed to behave at a very young age. I was 12 years old, and I remember like, hey, okay, so true story. I had a paper route. I came out into the living room 4:00 in the morning to get my bundles of papers. Lived in Sacramento. Who are you waving to, Patrick?
They called me by my name, Patrick, and they said Luana was there.
Oh.
I haven't heard Luana call me Patrick before.
Oh. So I went out into the living room to get my papers to start folding those and do my paper route. Paper routes build character, you guys. Anyway, it's a dying trade. Now it's just all on our phones. But she was literally in the living room. There was a mess of drugs on the coffee table. Cocaine, I assume. Or no. Let's be honest. We were poor, so I'm sure it was meth. And she was having just wild sex with two individuals on the couch. And I remember standing there at the age of 12 going, this is not normal behavior.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I had that.
So eventually your own character kind of came out and said, okay, this is not
cool, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've thought about that too. I'm curious as to how we are able to develop that at a young age, if that makes sense. You know, we're very impressionable, but I think there's some things that we have a foundational makeup and predisposition toward that are like, that's not cool.
Yeah. I can I share a story? Or you?
Yeah.
So when I think I was 7 or 8, and my mom had this opportunity she worked for Georgia Pacific, and we were in California, and they were moving their operation to Atlanta. And so they paid for her to go out there and look for a place and check out the office building and all that kind of stuff. And so I went with her, and it was great. It was the best. I mean, they put her up in this plush hotel with its own little kitchenette, and we got to go into the office that she would be working at, which was fantastic. They were going to pay for her move. They were going to help her buy a house. They were going to do all of these things. And I thought, man, this is great. And we went back to California, and she quit because she didn't want to move to Atlanta. And I think that was one of the first times when I kind of stepped back and looked at my mom and said, that was the dumbest thing you could have ever done. And it was just this much of respect was chinked off.
Did you ever get a clarification as to why that didn't? Because I know those are, again, very formative years when we're children, and you know that this could be a very successful thing for me as a child. And
it could have been. We
don't see it through our parents'
I
eyes.
could have been closer to the rest of my family. I could have been in a more stable, a more financially secure situation.
So what was the reason that it didn't happen?
I don't really know. I don't know if she just didn't want to move us farther away from our established environment. I don't know if it was something personal for her. I really don't know.
It was just scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could just have. New? Yeah, it could just have been something. But it was for my 8-year-old brain, it was a fantastic opportunity, and she just put the kibosh on it and said, nope, I quit. I'm going to go do something else.
So there's been some chat going on. I want to kind of link these two thoughts together. Cujo mentioned some situations are not worthy of forgiveness, and Lisa chimed in saying that forgiveness is necessary so we don't poison ourselves with resentment. I hate the term forgive and forget because it's absolving the person of any issues. I like to think of forgiveness is letting go of all hope of a better past. And forgiveness is not, in a lot of situations, for the other person. It's for ourselves.
Most
and to that
definitely.
being said, you asked about like why, where comes this idea of, like, hey man, that's not right when you're talking about your mom, this idea of identity. This is, as much as we crap on ego in this show, this is where it's lovingly shows up. Like parents are, when we were brought into this world, parents or whatever authority figure, they are formed in our minds as the rule givers, as the authority. Like I am not valid unless...
Also, hopefully, the security.
Yes. Right? And that's the other nice aspect too. And that's where that impression begins to mold and form. But when we begin to grow and get our sense of independence and sense of self, when ego rises and begins to start formulating all this stuff, it comes forward and saying like, hey, they are not me. They are not setting forth the rules of me. Like, like their universe is not me. And so that's where that conflict begins to like arise. Like, and this is a very hard part, in the child-parent relationship. I talked about this. At certain points, we have to go through a grieving process. That parental unit, as that authority figure, as we imagined, that's not who they are. They're just fucking people too.
Yeah,
right?
you have to eventually learn that they're not on a pedestal. They're not, they're human just like you are.
But that manifests so weird because as you're a kid, when I say like they are the authority figure, I'm not saying like we look up to them and everything. Like that impression is so strong that they are the basis of reality, of the rules and everything that we form. And life is learning how to grow outside of that, right? And as we begin to like notice traits from teachers or peers or anything like this, like you notice them in interactions, the way your friends interact with their parents, and then your brain just begins to catalog a larger information, repository to pull from. And
those first initial ones though are very scary.
Yeah, that's your baseline.
Yeah,
like
because your foundation has just been shaken. So that's the security gets a little wobbly. The self of the feeling of I'm completely safe where I'm at gets a little shaky. Those first initial ones are really terrifying. Those first
because your
steps
identity
of growth, I guess,
is tied with like your parent. Like your world exists as your parents as the be all.
Yeah, superheroes.
Like you're like, again, prediction modeling machines is what our brains want to be. I'm gonna be fine if my dad knows all the answers, right?
Yeah. Oh, my dad did know all the answers.
And then,
He's pretty smart.
Or my mom knows what to do in exactly every situation.
Yeah.
And then like it comes the time to be like, like when you're like, this situation just happened, does not compute. This does not fold out into my prediction modeling, or my prediction model here that just happened. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And then like,
it doesn't mean. This took me a long time to learn, and I'm still trying to learn it. It doesn't mean that they are any worse of a person than what they were before. They're just human.
And there's a wonderful liberation in that. I remember that being a critical point on me gaining my sobriety, is because for as many times that I felt frustrated where, that didn't line up, or like, they weren't who I thought they were, or whatever, wherever I got frustrated, so too they gave me my gifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And, a lot of times this is the hard part of this conversation when you brought it up, John, because as many demons as I had to face, I felt a lot of those came from impressions that I had from my relationship with my parents. But I need to honor the fact too that they also gave me a lot of wonderful tools to help deal with that. And, you know, some days I sit and contemplate and like, really are my demons my demons, or are my gifts my gifts? I don't think they're one way or another sometimes. I think they're just people trying to reconcile their path in life, right? You know, the obsession for, I talked about this before, the obsession for validation, you know, also drove me for like continuous improvement and seeking out more and more information. Right. That was a solid part of my drive, you know, and with education and information. So it's hard to unpack, because for every like good aspect, there's like, you know, there's two sides to a coin.
Oh,
it feels
absolutely.
like, so.
Yeah. I did, so I'm not going to belabor this whole point of giving a laundry list of all the negative shit, but so I'll just sort of take a right turn and say that I did learn a lot of good traits and behaviors during those fleeting moments of sobriety and good parenting that did happen. I think I have a really interesting knack for being having ingenuity on my side. I learned that from her and my dad, oddly enough, that, you know, we always had to be self-reliant. So we got pretty creative with whatever, cooking, fixing your own stuff.
Being poor, or I don't want to call it like that, but like you know, I don't lack resources. Sometimes I lack resourcefulness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Type of mentality.
You have to learn to be
The
MacGyver.
MacGyver skills are very,
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's stuff I take for granted, and then I have discussions with people or whatever, and I'm like, you should really know how to do that on your own. That's my ego. So I'm glad I have that ability. Like, if something breaks, I'll just figure out how to fix it.
But let's peel that one apart. Let's take that thought, you know, like at the core of that is a drive to fix. Something's wrong, I need to repair. And we've talked about how held wrongly that can be, you know, like a realization that not everything needs to be fixed. You know, not everything is like waiting for a maintenance, you know, routine at the tire shop, right?
Yeah.
Like emotions and other things. But at the same time, so too, that drove like the cascading ideation of like finding permutations of like how to solve it, right? You know, like, well, and understanding how things work and go together. Like, that's what I loved about being a kid, is like learning how to like take things apart and why certain things do what would replace it, you know, where are the weak spots and everything like that. That's just, you know, a fascinating aspect, but so too does it come with a dark side.
Yeah.
What's the dark side?
I told you, the desire to like not accept things as they are.
Oh, yeah.
Always trying to have to fix that. You cannot sit down and enjoy the moment. You sit down and look at something,
And that's got to be better.
and it's got to be better, or it's got to be tuned. It's got to be something, you know, that's the dark side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the light side is, you know, you sit there and, you know, say, you know, item breaks or whatever, you can come up with a new workflow around it, or come up with a new device, or find a way to repair it. And the desire to get to that path is very focused, right? Like, you're like, I need to see this through. I'm going to get it done. And when you get done with that, you know, you have a sense of accomplishment and everything like that too.
Yeah.
And so that's where our, this is where the danger begins with our minds as addicts. Oh man, that felt good. I felt validated. I fixed that.
Yeah.
I want that feeling again.
Now this is what I'm talking about. The baseline, when parents set the baseline, like, and you look back and you're like, oh man, I had fun repairing this with my dad, and he taught me this and this and this. And I'm like, in my mind goes, I got the validation I needed. I need to be in some scenarios where I'm fixing things. Ergo, I'm going to start looking at everything needs to be fixed.
Just so you can get that validation.
Right. So it's not a bad thing. It's just, we have to start somewhere. It just so happens that those imprints give us our starting points in life, and those starting points inherently come with bias. And that's
I think I think now that to go back to the topic, am I becoming my parents? There's been a lot of times in my life to where I've looked back and I would see my parents doing something and I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna do that. I'm never gonna do that. And sure enough, I find myself doing the same thing. But at least I'm getting to the point to where I can recognize it now. I can work on it. I can choose a different path to go down instead of going down the path that one of my parents or both my parents have chose to go down.
I think that's that revelation right there. Thank you for sharing, Judy, because that is one of the things that like drove me to get sober. Mm-hmm. Meaning, my kids were born and I was still drinking. I didn't get sober till over 3 years ago, and they're 8 and 6 respectively. So, I remember sitting there, and it was a very vivid moment of, the kids were doing something, and then out comes 30 years of repression, and verbatim, like my dad comes out of my voice. And I'm just like, holy shit, what just fucking happened? And of course, I didn't know how to process that. And, so I was, continued to drink and, brush it off and just like get drunk that evening or whatever. Mm-hmm. And not process it. And I realized that, there's a lot of things that I was worried about. Like, have we become our parents? For me is a very pertinent question, because of my children. I worry about, leaving the sins of the father for my son and my daughter. Mm-hmm. It goes, the door swings both ways for me. And so having that self-reflection was very hard to process, and it was very confusing. And so I don't know where I'm going with this, other than it was just like so confusing that when I finally got to the question of, is alcohol keeping me from what I want to achieve in life? And the answer was yes. And part of that was like, is it keeping me from achieving what I want to do as a parent and connecting with my kids? The answer was yes. Because I found myself checking out or not available for those moments, or when I was on autopilot, that the automatic responses that were encoded in me were some that I was not fully happy with, or, left certain impressions on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very interesting paradox, Patrick, because when I was thinking about this whole topic, I realized that, I was going down memory lane and dissecting how I had behaved all these years. And the person that I idolized the most out of my family was my grandfather, Grandpa John. And he died at a very young age, 58. He was drunk and fell down the stairs and died that way. And he was a really, really heavy drinker. And there was something about that throughout my drinking career that I idolized still. I always justified, but man, he was such a great person. He deserved it. These weird alcoholic thoughts that we get. Rationalizations for sure. When my father died from alcohol and opiate abuse and use, the rationaliz, I did not idolize him. He was a bigot and a racist, and he was a really, really broken person. I never really got the chance to understand who he was as a father, because I never really got to see it. He left my life when I was 2, and then we re-entered each other's lives briefly as adults, me as an adult, obviously. So I don't know, but that was sort of the last memory I have of him, which is unfortunate. He was just he was an asshole of a man and a shell of a soul, which was bad. So I don't know how I can ever figure out how to have a better memory of stuff, if that makes any sense. But when he died from abuse, I remember talking to myself and thinking, you can't drink like he did. You have to figure out a way to make this better. I didn't. Go ahead.
You may not have idolized him, but he made an impression nonetheless. The antithesis of what you wanted to become.
Yeah, I think so. But Patrick, I didn't tell myself I had to stop. I told myself I'd have to control my drinking in a much better fashion.
That's what the fucking scary part is about this journey. Is like we say, like, you know, like I remember being a kid and having, like, you know, some very tense moments with the family and be like, I'm never gonna fucking be like you, right?
Yeah.
And I meant it with my very core. And the, you know, further in life when we develop certain traits, because we imagine them as like in that moment, like the pure evil, the opposite of what we want to do. And you're establishing your boundary. Like there's no way I will get there, because that is just like not me. Right. Mm-hmm. And the further you get along in life and the more you realize in the gray areas and the habits that you know, how easy it is to slide into those areas, that it's like, as long as you're rationalizing that is other, that is not me. Okay. And life doesn't necessarily work. It doesn't always work like that. Mm-mm. Does that make sense? So, you know, when we begin to, and this is what I think forgiveness is important. Like, it's not trying to say, you know, your father is absolved from all the shit that he did, but it's trying to recognize, like, that was his Buddha nature. Being an asshole, being a racist or whatever, gave you the imprint of what you didn't want to be, and it was a cardinal direction in your life. Albeit it wasn't healthy or whatever, it was part of what made you you.
Yeah. I think for me, I recognized, I think it was probably in my 30s, I recognized that I was going down a lot of the same avenues that my own mother went down. And that's when I started to go, you know, I don't really want to go this direction. But also to recognize that my mom had the same bitterness towards her father, because he was also an alcoholic. So, you know, went down the line. So she had, yeah. So she had a dysfunctional relationship with him, and I did not want to have a dysfunctional relationship with my parents like my mom had with her father. So that was another portion of, I don't want to be like my parents, because I don't want to have those, I call them tethers, because they're tethered onto your own heart. Whether it's good or bad, there's still that string, that's still that tether that is connected to that person.
Samskaras.
So for me to heal that tether, or to heal that relationship, is to work on that forgiveness portion. Because it's the only thing that's going to make me a more solid person, is to forgive that craziness and unresponsibility, and all of the stuff that happened, because she was basically just doing what she knew how to do with the tools that she had, because she was raised that way from her father, and her mother was never really strong enough. She didn't have a strong enough personality to step in and, you know, say, hey, this is not right, because that's just the way it was, you know, in that time period. Yeah. So those tethers that we have with those people that we're connected to, that we have taken into our heart, whether it's good or whether it's bad, are still there. And the only way for you to release that and to heal yourself is to let all of that garbage go. It's not easy. It's difficult. But to recognize it and work on it, that's the key.
Yeah. I try to do that, but here's where it's going to get really deep. And I guess this is my, not a challenge to both of you, but maybe just a different perspective. And that is that with having lost both of my parents when they were so young, and having all of this unresolved angst and tribulation that I go through, I feel I feel like I can forgive a lot of this stuff, but it's veiled around the fact that I feel a constant emptiness because I never had the opportunity to become sober and conscious and to talk to both of them about life and my upbringing and them. So sometimes when Judy gets frustrated with her mom or her dad, I very passively aggressively remind her that at least she still has those parents and she's got something to work through. And I know that's very cliche and abrasive, but I hope that makes sense, that everything that I've gone through, the emptiness, to recap, I wish I had the opportunity to sit down with my dad and go, hey, man, I got a lot to talk about. I need you to help me navigate some of this stuff. And my mother. It's tough not to have them around.
Sir, go ahead.
Do you still feel like, I think it's very visceral. To me, that sounds like a desire to be validated. Fuck you for dying.
Yeah.
You didn't get a chance to validate me. I did this despite you. Validate me still.
I also thought that if you were to have that conversation and your mother is still in the sick, diseased world that she's in, what would you think the outcome would be?
I don't know. I don't have a trajectory towards the end game. It's just a hollowness that's there sometimes.
Do you ever feel guilty for staying angry at them?
No, I don't. I still have resentment of the abuse that I was put through. So I can't feel guilty. Not that I'm aware of. It's all right. Transparently, Patrick, it's not stuff that I sit around and ponder a lot.
No, I mean, but that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, when I said that, still feeling like you need a reaction from them, good or bad, is still underpinning like a desire to have a validation from them. Like, I'm trying to say, like, their impressions as parents go so deep that, at certain points, like, good or bad feelings from them don't matter anymore. The fact that we just want their validation, and maybe it's not validation, right? Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, it's just so born into us through our behaviors. So,
well, they were the first persons or people to make notations on that blank slate that when we were born. So those are the people that we would want the validation from.
They're so complex. My story is, a couple months ago, I shared this one with you guys that, my dad and my stepmom were over, and I think we were doing gifts for like a birthday or a holiday or something. And Flynn was, he's got ADHD and he's 6. So, you ride the waves.
Yeah, he was Flynn.
And sometimes, he's focused and in on stuff. And sometimes he's just like, rolling on the floor. And like, this is the hard part about relationships, is setting boundaries. We talked about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not, like I said, it's letting go of all hope of a better past. It's not absolving the person. Mm-hmm. It's recognizing that those behaviors are there. And part of that is setting boundaries for yourself, to learning how to validate yourself. So with Flynn, part of it is, like, I don't want to be the parent like, oh man, just let him get away with everything, or just let him happen. Like, he's on the floor having a temper tantrum. And I'm like, at this point, our parenting begins to kick in. And I'm like, hey, Flynn, it looks like you're having trouble keeping control of your body. Do you need to go sit in your room for a little bit? Do you need a 5-minute break? And then I also check in, like, are you hungry? Brett, or Halt. One of the best things that sobriety gave us is, it also works for toddlers. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Just checking in. So I took it as a cue to check in on him. And that's a dialogue. Mm-hmm. He's 6. You're not going to be like, hey, man, what's up? And he's like, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I'm about 60% lonely because I need attention, 30% hungry and then 10% angry. He's not going to do that, right? So we're sitting there walking through it, and of course it's frustrating if you're not in it or accustomed to that. And out of my stepmom's mouth was like, "Hey Flynn, if you just like sit down and be quiet, we will love you more." And like inside of me arose this little like firework, and it just went, and I'm just like, this realization, like, because I was sober and minimized contact, I went like, in my head was just so much going on. Like at first was just like pure hot fire rage. I'm like, fuck you for trying to like, parent my kid like that, make it so transactional. But at the same time, like I went, oh shit, that makes a lot of fucking sense right now, right? And then at the same time, it gave me the gift to realize like, I am not my parents. As much as I have traits and habits of them, I am fucking not my parents, and I am grateful for that. So we stayed focused on the conversation. I was able to get him some food and a break away, and it wasn't. And it also made me realize to talk. You talked about them not having the toolkits or the same items, like. So part of that is wrapped up with, like, I do personally, my wife and I have boundaries with our own parents regarding those interactions, right?
That's a tough one. And setting boundaries for your parents.
And at the same time, we also want them to go and spend time with them, right? Because we're not going to be the helicopter parents. And at the same time, this is so hard because, when they spend time with them, we like to talk about what happened and like situations like that. And knowing that they can't control other people's behavior, right? The best we can do is lead and model the way.
Yep.
And knowing that, like, it is important to listen to parents who are, or people who are in charge of your safety, but also to learning to develop the autonomy that, my job as a parent is not to protect them from the path, or how do they say that? My job is not to prepare the path, but to train the child for the path.
That's a good one. I also, to go back to your comment about boundaries, that's a tough one when you become an adult, to set those boundaries between you and your parent, to say, okay, I don't want to talk about this right now, or when the conversation gets so heated that neither one of us are paying attention or learning or nothing is being resolved, I want to back away.
I mean, that's one of the hardest breaks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what age, like teenage rebellion, we like to call it, because when the child has to learn autonomy, the parent's job is protection and safeguard of the child. And at a certain point, learn to unbind those tethers and to reshape the relationship. There, of course, the rebellion is an important phase, because that's continuing. Like when a child learns to stand up for themselves, and that is trying to say, like, I am not emotionally dependent upon you, and that is confusing for both sides. Because that is the way that the relationship was founded. And if you have a parent that is not aware of that, or not in tune with that, or like very emotionally dependent in other relationships and has toxic relationships, it gets very messy, right? It just cascades out from there.
Yeah. When do you go from parent to child to two adults having a conversation?
Yeah.
When do I become a New Yorker? Right? It doesn't happen all at once, right?
No, it's difficult when you have those situations to where you're a grown adult and you still have to deal with a parent who is still trying to be a parent. It's very confusing. It's very difficult. I think it becomes more of having the child address the parent as, okay, I want to talk to you as an adult here. I don't want to talk to you as a parent child here. And it's not it's not easy to go through that transition. I think the more you do it, though, the easier it becomes. But, like you said, it doesn't happen overnight.
It's complex. Yeah. So on the flip side, having all these things and being parentless, if you will, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I wanted to tell you, and Patrick, maybe you don't know this, but it has helped me have a different transactional relationship with Judy's father, because he is my surrogate. He's been in my life for a long time, and of course he lives with us now. But I've found myself being really introspective and thoughtful about how I navigate that relationship too, because I think sometimes there's inherited behaviors from me that I'm like, all right, so dad is here and he's sort of my father figure, but I can help change some outcomes of that relationship, which is not the healthiest thing to do. But I realized this morning I crave that parenting still at my age. I'm gonna have to have some minor surgery on my shoulder, and he's known that I've been in pain since September. So this morning, for like the 30th time, I walked out and said, "Good morning, Dad." And he says, "Good morning. How's your shoulder?" And I just immediately went, "You don't have to keep asking me that. It's not gonna get better until I have surgery and we figure out a path to resolution that way." And then I went on my run and I was thinking about it. And I'm like, wow, John, you are quite the asshole sometimes. and I realized that maybe you don't have to say it like that, because that was the frustration with me in the situation, not at the question. So I realized that, and I came back and I told him that. I said, "Hey, I didn't mean it to come out like that." Long story short, I ended it with, because I appreciate you caring about me, because I like to be cared for.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's the type of conversations that are needed.
Yeah.
That's also a very good show of your own personal growth as well. I don't think, if we were still drinking, I don't think you would have recognized that.
Yeah. My son, I think we had like a blow up a couple weeks ago, or we're just not, he was being Flynn, I was like being me and like wanting to isolate and retreat. And of course it was just like me giving the dad yell, and afterwards, we finally separated. He came and he's like, I didn't appreciate you yelling. And this is a 6-year-old telling me this. He's like, I didn't appreciate you yelling.
I love Flynn.
And I wanted to be like, and I thought about it. I'm like, as parents, like you feel this is the weird cycle, as I feel like older generations had. As a kid, I just wanted my dad's validation all the time. And so if you're in a state of seeking validation, when you eventually become the parent, when you flip the script, you imprint that on your kids. Don't you see me as a fucking dad? I am the authority figure. When I put my foot down, like, I need to be seen, and so where you can see where it comes out of control. And I realized that the right thing to do in that situation wasn't to like try and fight my authority. It was like, you know what, Flynn, you were right. And I didn't respond, appropriately. And I will continue to work on that. And he was like, yeah, well, you need to do better. And I was like, I appreciate you pointing that out right now, but so too is this a time to reflect on your actions as well.
Nice.
And so it had to be a dialogue that we walked through it, because he's like, yeah, of course I'm fucking right, and I couldn't be like, you're just a fucking dumb kid. What do you know? But there's truth in that discussion there, to realize that, like, hey, I was not. And so that helps us build cues earlier. Like if we're in those moods, like, I don't understand how my body is feeling right now. I need some space to process. I will come to talk to you when I'm ready. Or like, that's why I use language like, it looks like you're not being safe in your body right now, if he's, just being wild and out of control. And so more conversations like that help build space for future conversations where you can build in cues earlier and raise the awareness.
See, that's the patience I was telling you that I appreciate with you.
I want to interrupt really quick. Fem said something. No one wants to really be a New Yorker. Trust me. I
are one.
I are one. I thought that was funny. Sorry, I had to interrupt.
Yeah. So out of the mouths of babes, like they said. So
yeah.
But
you have those amazing moments too. Tell me verbatim that day you came home and you had a crappy day and he sat down and he's like, Dad, go ahead.
Well, you probably remember it more than me, but it was something along the lines of like, Dad, it looks like you had a bad day. Would you like to build Legos with me?
Yeah. Or watch a movie.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Because he's a great kid.
But that is an excellent example, because...
Well, where'd he get that from? Sorry, go ahead.
As a kid, if we were always looking to our parents for validation, we were just waiting, right? Mm-hmm. Please make sure I'm all right, please, and that made me so happy because it made me realize that, like, yeah, he's still a kid and he does need that help. But at the same time, like I said, this is me preparing him for the path. Like, he realized that he was empowered to check in on his parents and, to be like, hey, I recognize this state. Like, I don't need validation right now. This person does.
He was able to go outside of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's not every time. And, but
those are little moments that you can treasure.
But I was very happy that, I was present and able to enjoy that, like I wasn't so past me if I was drinking and been like, fuck yeah, I need to be validated. It's like, thank you. Finally, somebody seeing me. Like, of course I'll play Legos, like I deserve it. I was very humbled.
Yeah.
When he asked that.
That's very cool. Yeah. I think this was a good topic.
Yeah.
I could have, like I mentioned, the first thing when we first started talking about it, when you first brought it up, the first thing that I thought of was all of the hurt and all of the stuff that I felt when I was a kid. But then I thought about it and I'm like, okay, well, am I really becoming my parents? What did my parents do that I wanted to do or didn't want to do? And there is a lot of things that my parents did that I appreciate the fact that they did that. I mean, I got the drive to learn new stuff from my dad, because he's the mental, and I got a lot of the compassion from my mom, because she is a very compassionate person. So there are a lot of things that I did get from my parents and a lot of things that they did that I'm glad that I still do those things. Like, when I was younger, my mom used to be kind of like a mom for my friends. So anybody who was going through any kind of rough time, my mom would be like, come here and give them a hug and make sure they'd have something to eat or something like that. So, those are I'm glad that I have some of those traits that I inherited from my mom, for when people come over to the house and I want to feed them and I want to take care of it. Yeah, exactly. So, there's a lot of stuff that I did get from my parents that I am grateful for. They aren't all, traumatic train wrecks or anything like that.
I thought about this question too. Have we become our parents? Much like you were saying and reflecting on the gifts, and I thought about, did our parents ask the same question? And it's absolutely, like, I'm sure they felt the same issues, have we become our parents? And that helped me humanize that. And it made me realize, like, there's something that I haven't become my parents, but every parent wishes a better life for their child. Yeah. Every parent does. And to that, at first I was like, people are people. I don't necessarily know if I have a better life. When I've become sober, I want to finally recognize that I am worthy of that honor. And I am grateful for the gifts that my parents have given me and put me, like, I have stepped in. I don't want to call it a better life, but like the amount of tools and resources and resourcefulness at my availability, I am very grateful for their plenty.
Yeah.
So I have not become my parents, but I'd like to think that I've fulfilled their wish of, wanting a better life.
Yeah, I'm also grateful for those little things that they tripped up on, and I got to see, so that I didn't have to trip up on them like they tripped up on them. So that's another kind of backwards gratitude, but I'm grateful for those as well.
Yeah. Well, keep it in the spirit with going round robin on that. I have not become my parents because I broke the cycle of death by addiction so far. So,
and you're doing a damn good job at it.
yeah.
They, I'd like to think in some universe, like even the worst parents, that they still wanted a better life for their kids, and as much as they failed as parents, at least in some regard, you living your life as you have, you're fulfilling that wish too. It doesn't validate anything else that they've done behavior wise, but like, I think that's something to stand tall about.
Yeah, and I think that some of the things that your mom did and said, I don't know if it was actually her or if it was her addiction.
Yeah, I know. I've tried to comprehend that too, but it's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. I can only make up the reality that I do or do not want.
That's true.
So I navigate the world with the tool set that I have, and I try to be a good man and a good husband.
You are.
Yeah.
You don't have to try for us. We know you are, like Judy said.
Life is complex. It is tough sometimes, but
Especially sober life.
yeah. Yep.
Sobriety is not an easy journey, but it's so worth it.
That's right. Okay. This has been a fantastic conversation, you guys.
Yeah, this has been a good one.
Did we have any questions from the chat or anything we need to discuss or acknowledge? I know you guys have been watching. Thank you.
It was a robust chat amongst themselves.
Yeah,
It's great.
it was. Thanks for the participation. I had
Yes, thank
He's
you.
cutting onions in here, yes.
someone,
I don't know what you're talking about.
someone in one of the comments in one of the videos the other day, this lady said, and I quote, Patrick. Oh, she said, that Patrick is a wise man.
Shovel enough bullshit. Something's got to stick.
I wanted to share something that, so my brother-in-law sends kind of little affirmations. He's also a recovering alcoholic. And he's been in recovery for 9 years.
Since
10 years?
2014, I think. Michelle will correct us. I think 2014, yeah. I think this is his 10th birthday.
Yeah. He's been amazing. So he sends these little affirmations every day. And this one was, I'm clearing out old confusion and doubt so that I can see the miracle of today. And I thought that was so cool. And kind of apropos for the topic that we're talking about today, about old habits and old impressions and old stuff that we don't want to have in our life anymore, old emotions, old attachments that we don't want to have anymore, that I don't want to have anymore, old hurts and old angers that I don't want to have anymore, just because it doesn't help me any. So yeah, that was just very apropos. I wanted to share that. So that was
it is amazing. When the stars align, we will have Guy on the show. Guy, yeah, he was our inspiration for a lot of this. I've known heavy drinkers, so have you, Patrick, but I dare say this man consumed all of the Jack Daniels on the planet. he was where he was and where he is now is mind-boggling. But I always say I'm not going to tell his story because that's for him to share. But One of the things I try not to have a ton of regrets, but I remember having a spicy argument with his wife, Michelle, and I told her, I was like, guy won't make it past 6 months of sobriety. There's just no fucking way in hell. And here we are.
Yeah, 10 years later.
That was the alcoholic John saying that, because I was watching someone start to
How would you
succeed.
responded if it had been like, you know what? Not only is he going to make it, but he's going to be inspiration for your sobriety.
Yeah.
Bullshit. The hell you say?
Drunk John would have been like, get the fuck out of here.
Bullshit.
I wanted to thank JRITT11C. This is his new here. We do this every Saturday. I'm sure everybody else or her. We do this every Saturday. Everybody else on the chat has kind of filled you in on how things go. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, Odie's our unofficial mod. He answered it already.
I know.
He's all over it.
We need to get
Odie,
him on the
Lisa,
payroll.
Yeah.
Fem, Michelle.
Yeah. Yeah, welcome, J-Rit. Okay, that's it. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. Thanks for again, this conversation helped me, so I appreciate it. Join us next week. Tune in, same time, same channel.
What are we talking about?
We are going to be discussing toxic relationships. What
That's
are
a
they?
juicy one.
How to navigate them, and Judy's going to give tips and tricks on how to exit them.
Why me?
You said earlier.
No, I'm just...
I'm curious to talk about that. I haven't had a lot of toxic relationships. I've had toxic friendships.
Your mother was a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
I
Well,
I think the way you ended talking about attachments and how, when we deal with relationships, that we also deal with the mountain of emotional attachment
Yes.
with them.
The tether.
The tether is a very important thing, because especially in oftentimes I see in toxic relationships or stuff where, maybe it's a good time to bring up the drama triangle again and some codependency items.
Yeah.
There is this sunk cost fallacy in a lot of those relationships where we feel like that tether, or I need to be validated and having so much time spent, and like the deep-seated stuff that you feel like the sunk cost fallacy that you can't give up on the relationship, right? Or you need to continue on that path. So it'd be, it's an interesting segue for sure.
and I'd like to talk about watching. Well, I'll discuss me personally having watched other friends in toxic relationships with is really difficult to navigate, because there's a lot to go on with that.
Well,
Yeah,
it's like
most
somebody
definitely.
like struggling to get sober is like that. Coming to awareness of certain relationships is a door that they have to walk through on their own, right? You can't get sober for a person. You can't make the person understand the toxic relationship. The best you can do is lead them out of the way and, create a healthy relationship with them and provide that space for them.
Yeah. Or as I like to say, lead and model the way and hope that they follow my excellence.
Excellent.
Okay, let's wrap it up. If you're new here, Jarrett, please join our Discord channel. Check in on all the news and updates over there.
Yeah, and welcome. It's congratulations on your 2 years.
Yes. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay.
And now that we've had, hopefully we'll get Lisa back on for a bit, and then also potential other guests in the future.
Nice. Always exciting.
And I just wanted to say, Odie, no pockets, no wallet.
What's Odie? See, every time we're having a serious conversation, Odie's throwing some shit out there. That's why you laughed. I could tell.
That's his job. Be sure he's got a stream coming up, so why don't you hop on over to there and distract him?
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you want to plug his?
Yeah. Check out Odie N7 on Twitch.
I heard it was Odin 7.
Odin 7. Yeah, I like that. That's how I read it
Odin
once.
7.
Odin 7.
He's gonna get
cool.
mad at me for saying that. No, it's Odie
N7. That's right. Yeah, go Chiefs. Okay, for rest of the day, Judy and I are playing the greatest video game ever made in the history of any video game.
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Enshrouded.
Shroud. That is a good game, but no.
Oh God.
I have not played Red
all
Dead.
these indie games are fantastic.
Have you ever played Red Dead, the regular Red Dead?
Yeah.
No, neither of them.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my God. Patrick.
Wow.
I'm trying to Odie's trying to get me on Star Wars: The Old Republic, and it's a wonderfully done, like in
Yeah.
the Star Wars universe lore, like very well taken care of. But it's a MMO RPG.
Yeah.
So like the threshold of engagement time wise does not fit the dad life.
Yep.
So well.
Yep. Understood. Okay. All right, everyone. Be kind
Thank
to
you.
yourselves.
Be patient with yourself.
You are loved.
And thank you so much.
Yep. We'll see you guys next time. Talk to y'all later. Bye.